Hey guys, Coach here. Hey, I wanted to introduce you to a beautiful backdrop. I am in my Shangri-La right now, but I'm here to talk to you about water. We're talking about the basics of irrigation this week, the basics with a couple of upgrades, and I want to really emphasize the importance of what you see behind me. The proper use and conservation of our water, both underground water and surface water. Hey, this is all about Irrigation Basics 101, and I'm sure glad you're here with me. You enjoy the backdrop for a second. Let's get this thing started. You know, throughout our country and the world, only about 50% of residential homes actually have underground automated irrigation systems. Most of them are reliant on Mother Nature and the rain that they bring. It doesn't mean that on occasion there doesn't need to be supplemental irrigation, and that's exactly what I want to start this episode out with, is kind of a mine and mine alone definition of an irrigation system. I think I define it as an outdoor supplemental watering system that assists homeowners and commercial people alike with delivering that supplemental water to a ornamental or agricultural type of environment. And that can be your backyard, it could be Farmer Joe's field down the street, or it could be a commercial florist growing things inside of a greenhouse. But it's all automated irrigation. And the best way that an individual can conserve water in this day and age is to make sure that if you're going to be putting an irrigation system in for yourself, that it's done correctly the very first time with some planning, some thought, and some little practical skill application. You know, 80 years ago or more now, irrigation systems were constructed out of galvanized metal pipe, generally put in the ground for only the extended pinky part of our society. And they were done by pipe fitters and plumbers back then. Landscapers were basically the people who mowed lawns. And so irrigation was really kind of a luxury item for residential homeowners, even those out west. And what did they do out west for all those decades? Yep, everybody was a hose dragger. They drug hoses all over the place, or when Dad got home from work, he'd go out there with a cocktail and start watering the lawn, watering that beautiful patch of turf that takes up so much of our time for homeowners and professionals alike on weekly maintenance. Then, not so long ago, I think it's probably about 60 years now, along came polyvinyl chloride. Polyvinyl chloride was invented and constructed for the sole purpose of plumbing other than rusting out galvanized steel. Polyvinyl chloride, PVC, really changed the horizon and the landscape, no pun intended, of how DIY homeowners could actually put it in themselves. With simple gluing, with chemical solvents and stuff, the average Jane and Joe could trench out, dig out, and install underground irrigation. Back then, automation still hadn't made it to the irrigation world. It was still, you went out with that little metal key and you turned on those brass valves by hand with the little wheel on it, and you turned on your automated irrigation system. And it really simplified a lot of people's lives. Not only watering planting beds, but also that ever so prized front and back lawn. But when you think about it, even though they could, should they? Could they? Did they do it right back then? There has been a lot of irrigation systems that I have consulted on that were decades old. And the way they were put in by the original homeowner, despite them being PVC or galvanized, there wasn't the correct thought when it came to the system that they had available to them versus what that system could do. And that's what we're covering here today. We're covering the 5 basics of irrigation. And despite all the parts and pieces, everything that homeowners had at their disposal, Many homeowners and DIY homeowners were really struggling with correctly putting them in because they didn't understand the hydraulics and water dynamics that go into a sprinkler system. Many people, even to this day, still think that they can take a 3/4 inch valve, throw some pipe down, and put 10 or 12 heads on. Now they got an automatic sprinkler system. But we're going to cover how that system could be improved vastly so that your coverage is correct, your plants, lawn and trees, vegetable gardens, whatever you might have, gets the correct amount of water considering the situation it's in. So let's think about the few elements of an irrigation system that you need to have your head kind of wrapped around a little bit before you go launching down to the box store or a specialty store and start picking up parts and pieces. Now, if you followed me for any time at all, I am all about the plan. The landscape plan, the budget, etc. And nothing is more important than when you're planning out your irrigation system. Maybe you've drawn up your design and you're stalwart and you're convinced that that design is going to be working for you. Well, if you do a copy or you have an overlay of it, now it is the time to plan that irrigation system so it works for that diligence that you've put into the design. When you're talking about planning, it's going to do a few things for you. It is going to start making your materials list as you put that plan together. Whether you have a 5,000 square foot lawn, whether you have no lawn at all, it won't matter, but it will tell you exactly how many things you're going to start needing when you go to the hardware store. So planning, don't go past planning to anything until that is in place. Another dynamic in irrigation systems is pressure. Pressure and gallons per minute. Both, with some little simplistic math, is going to determine how much system you're really going to need to serve your entire yard area. Some people do not have very good water pressure. They don't have a very high flow rate in the form of gallons per minute. So they really struggle when they put together a 2-valve system for a big yard and wonder why a sprinkler head is barely putting out any water at all. You know, the average pounds per square inch or pressure that a residential area has is anywhere from about 40 to as high as 80 psi. Now, the highest I've ever dealt with was 90 psi, and I generally dealt with, you know, urban and suburban and some rural, you know, homesteads, and 90 psi was just too damn strong. And 40 psi meant that I had to expand the number of valves that I had, and then some tricks that I'll share with you in a second on how to take care of that far-reaching part of the yard when you only have 40 psi at your valves. The other thing is size of your service line that comes into your home. Whether it comes from a well, a pressure tank or a bladder tank, or it is city or county provided, you need to know the size of that pipe. Sometimes it's 1 inch. More modern homes, it generally is 1.25 inches, depending on where you're at. And in some cases, it's 3/4 inch. And that's kind of a small service line for a whole house plus a yard, but it still does happen quite a bit. So a little bit of math that goes along with it. You know that you have X number of pounds per square inch on your hose bib out front and your hose bib in the backyard, whatever you might have. You know that you have, let's say, a 1-inch service line that comes into your house and provides the outdoor faucets. And if you're really lucky and you're in a newer home, maybe the builder provided a PVC stub out to your backyard so that you, if you're going to do your backyard yourself, you have a takeoff point right there. The other thing is zones. Zones are going to save your bacon. So if you have a 3/4 inch pipe to work with, or maybe a 1-inch pipe, and you have 40 pounds per square inch, but you have a rather large yard, the way you are going to accommodate that is by increasing the number of zones or valves to service everything. Maybe you have a well system, and you have an 1.5 inch pipe that comes out of that well. Lucky you. And your yard is, let's say, medium to large size. Now you have a combination of pounds per square inch, large pipe diameter that you're having to use, and you have the ability to do some simple math and realize how many zones are you really going to have to service your entire property. And not only for today, guys, not only for today, but plan out what you're going to do for the future as well. Will you need to take that water system and run it to other parts of your property for future use? As an example, maybe you're going to have a she shed or a man cave someday. Maybe you're going to have a workshop that will need water access. Now's the time, through planning and kind of understanding zones of where your water is going to come from and how you can tie into it simply in the future. So the way I learned, the way I was taught decades ago, was you're going to have what they call a POC. A POC is your point of connection of where you are going to tap in to your house system to create your new irrigation system. That point of connection has to be at a place that you can get your valve assembly done at a convenient location. For instance, if your house is 100 feet away from your water source, maybe it's your well, tank, etc., you're going to want to get that pressurized line or that point of connection that you're going to dedicate to this irrigation system a lot closer to your house. I strongly suggest you don't locate all your valve assembly out there at the pressure tank. That's not good. You could do remote field application, but you're just doubling your costs of wiring and other things, and that's just not necessary. And that's a little more advanced down the road anyway. We're talking basics here today. So get that pressurized line, whether you took it off of a hose bib off the back wall, you took it off of a stub that the builder left for you, or you brought in a pressurized line that you tapped into near your well. You brought it into the house area, and now you're going to locate that valve assembly near a convenient location. Convenient not only for you to use, to inspect, and to maintain, but also a place that you're going to want to bring in the wiring and a timer location so that the project can actually be automated to save you time and to deliver the right amount of water to your landscape so it works best for conservation and the health of your landscape itself. So a couple little notes for you, and you can jot it down or you can replay this, whatever you want to do. But a single valve with a particular pipe size is only going to be able to deliver a finite amount of water. And based on the pressure and the gallons per minute for each one of those valves is how many sprinkler heads you're going to be allowed to put on each valve. This does not apply to drip systems. We'll cover those in a couple minutes. So for instance, you've decided to have a 700 square foot lawn that you're going to surface, just as an example. And you know that the number of heads that you have to put on each valve is going to range on a 1-inch pipe size, probably about 6, maybe 7, depending on how far that lawn is away from your valves and what size nozzle and how many gallons per minute each nozzle is going to deliver out there. So on a 1-inch pipe, you know that you're going to have about 13 gallons a minute at 50 psi. That's an average. That's a basic residential average. Yours may be a little higher or it may be a little lower. If you're dealing with wells that cycle, you know that you're going to have probably 60 pounds at the high end, and it's going to drop and kick back on at 40 psi or sometimes 35 psi. And you're going to see it in an irrigation system that'll be performing super well and then kind of draw down as that pressure tank alleviates itself of the water and the pressure. And then it kicks back on again and your sprinkler system will go bigger and better. Very good idea on well systems to get out there, set your well at 65 psi and kick on at 45 psi. It'll help you out, and it won't cause that well to constantly recycle itself all the time. That pump, that underground pump down there, it'll stay on more consistently, and that's what you want. Perfect wells is where you can get an irrigation system that kicks on and it causes that pump to run continuously instead of on, off, on, off. Then you know you've really strived to hit your mark perfectly. There's a couple different kinds of spray heads and other water delivering devices when it comes to above ground sprinkler water delivering devices. You have your basic pop-up heads for lawns and shrubs, the ones that sit at ground level and then pop up when pressure activates them and delivers water to the lawn or the plants. Then you have lawn heads, and sometimes used for planting beds, but the large gear-driven rotors that are set at a particular angle and arc, and even diffusers on each nozzle so it stays within the area and you're not watering your neighbor's yard, you're not watering your car on the driveway. You can diffuse it down so that it works just in the area of interest for that particular spray head. Maybe it's going to be set at a 90 degree because you have it in a corner of a lawn. Or maybe it's halfway in the lawn and you're going to have it set for a 180 degree arc. But it's not going to water the windows of the house, and it's not going to go shooting out into the middle of the street. Nowadays, we've even gone above and beyond as far as water conservation, and you can even put drip irrigation for lawns underneath the ground, 4 to 6 inches or so. Netafim, not sponsored. Netafim has a product, and I believe other companies do now too, where you can actually deliver it to the Netafim drip systems, and all the irrigation water delivery is underground so that there is virtually no waste of water whatsoever. I put 2 or 3 of those in over the years. Okay, so let's do some simple math. If we know that we have 50 pounds per square inch of pressure at our hose bib or whatever your point of connection is, you have a 1-inch pipe that you're going to use as the system to start your valves and your valve assembly, and then going out downstream into your field layout. And you know that you're going to use a pop-up spray head for your lawn. Hypothetically, how many heads are you going to be able to put on that system? Usually you look at the top of a sprinkler head and it'll generally say, let's just say a 12 or a 15. And that generally means the radius at which it's going to spray away from the head. But maybe it's a 1/2 inch one. We're going to use that as the example. Usually that's about 1.8 gallons per minute comes out of that single sprinkler head at 50 pounds per square inch. Do the math. 1.8 gallons per minute divided into 13 gallons per minute. You know that that's only going to give you, for peak performance, about 6 heads per valve. Now, start laying out your lawn sprinkler heads, making sure that your sprinkler heads are probably 10-foot spaced so you have good head-to-head coverage, and lay that out onto your lawn. Count up the number of heads. How many do you have? Do you have 6? Probably not, probably a few more than that. Let's just say 12. Let's just say you have 12 heads to cover that lawn area perfectly. How many valves? 2. 2 valves. One to service 6 heads, another valve to service 6 heads. Not one valve to service all 12. That will not work. You will have a very, very poor performing lawn system. And you'll have to either rip it out and do it over, or you'll be out there with a hose, and why did you even bother? So, 2 valves so far to do just your lawn area. Now let's talk about your perimeter beds around your fence. We're going to drip irrigate because we want to conserve water, and we want to deliver that water right at the plants where they can use it. Besides, plant health and the looks of plants are so much better off without being sprayed on by hard water. which is going to spot up the leaves, ruin the flowers in some cases, and promote disease during certain times of the year. So now we're going to deliver the water right at the plants, and we're going to do a drip system. We're going to do one valve that's going to service the whole backyard fence area, and we're going to do another valve to service the foundation beds in and around the house in the backyard. How many valves? 2. So we've developed a 4-valve system for the backyard. Now most timers are set for initially 4-valve systems. So you're good to go there. Do you have a plug on the back wall of the house? You can put your timer right there, run the wires to your valve assembly and plug it in the wall. Program your timer up and you're off and running. So as you've laid this out in a little sketch for yourself, you can see how your plan has already started to shop for you. It's already told you you're going to need 4 valves. It's already told you you'll need 1 timer. It has also told you what's the distance from where your timer is going to be versus where your valves are going to be. Therefore, how much sprinkler wire will you need? It has also told you about how many connecting parts are going to be needed with the L's and other things. It's also told you the number of plants that you're going to be drip irrigating. You generally want to have 2 emitters per plant minimum. If you have big trees that you're putting in, you're going to want at least 4 emitters per tree if they're larger trees, 15-gallon or larger. And this will all be dependent on, again, where you're located. And nowadays, what does your municipality allow you to do on water days or no water days? When I left the Northern California area, we just came out of a drought and we're going back into another one. The municipality did not set any restrictions on watering if you had a drip system. If you only had drip, maybe a lawnless landscape, fine. That's why I bring up the underground drip systems for lawns nowadays, because you can oftentimes skirt around municipality restrictions and you can water 7 days a week. But make sure you check with your municipality and see what they allow. Now for you guys that get plenty of summer rains and winter rains, etc., and you don't have to worry about these things except for those extreme times of the year when it's just not raining and you can see some stress. That's why you have an irrigation system for supplemental water. Now for you folks that are out west, it's mandatory water for anybody who wants to keep a decent landscape. Just make sure that it's done correctly the first time, that it delivers the proper amount of water on the proper days and at the proper times of day so that you get the maximum amount of landscape service from the amount of water that you're delivering to it. Hey, I am always available to you as far as questions regarding irrigation or any other landscape question. If you have questions about irrigation, youryardcoach@gmail.com. You can reach out to me personally. If you've done one of these yourself, drop a comment for me and let me know what challenges you faced so that others can learn. And if you have one that was done really good, pics are always welcome. Don't forget about my website, youryardcoach.com. There you will find a very expanded and in-depth learning educational tools in the form of my ebook and the digital course, both reduced in cost so that it fits anybody's budget. Guys, that's what I have for you. There's the down and dirty basics of landscape irrigation. I sure hope it helped out a little bit. I'll see you guys next week. As always, to your landscape success. Plan of the week is here as well, and don't forget the podcast if you're on the move. You guys take care. Bye for now.